Hopefully some of you have been able to get out this Canada Day weekend, enjoy a little time off, some R&R with family and friends. The weather's held up, no rain like they were calling for. I think some of you guys went to the beach yesterday. That sounds awful, but for those who like that, my blessings to you. It's amazing though, as time goes on, like summer has basically just started there like a week or so ago, and yet I was at the mall this past week and I saw a sign, end of season sale. So you can't buy shorts and t-shirts anymore, because pretty soon out on the racks will be hats and mitts, winter coats, and snow boots. So that is life in Canada, unfortunately. But the good thing about the changing of the season, it brings to us hockey. And Barb and I are looking forward to that, right? There you go. I need to fix our doorbell at home. There's a loose wire or some kind of connection issue going on with the box. There's still power going through it. Whenever someone pushes the button, you kind of hear a but the part that tells the little switch to move and hit the chime that makes the ding-dong sound, it's just not firing. There's some things, though, I'm just not really that anxious to fix it, though. Some things, when they stop working, I just absolutely pounce on. If the internet is glitchy, I am on it like Trudeau spends money that isn't his, all right? I search for the issue, I reboot the modem, I run a diagnostic. I am on that phone finding a solution to the problem. And every person under the age of 30 has no idea what this means as a phone, right? If we run out of broccoli at home, I somehow seem to not be overly stressed out about it. But if I open the fridge and notice that we are down to 1 carton of coffee cream, I am on my way to Walmart, so fast the tire marks on the road leave those fire trails like from Back to the Future. Man cannot live on bread alone, nor without his daily allotment of coffee. That's from the Message version, all right? But the doorbell, I just don't really care, to tell you the truth. If we are not home, then it doesn't matter anyway. But if we are home, it's really kind of redundant the way the house is set up. The front door's got a big old piece of glass on the top, so we can kind of tell if someone's there anyway. They can always knock, pretty easy to do that. But, if people who come by, they really don't have to ring anyways for the most part. They can just come in to our family, to our friends. Our home is your home. But lastly, we also have a backup doorbell system I refer to as Crypto and Chewy. Because the boys are always on the back of the couch looking outside, and if anyone dares set foot on our lawn or just go up our street, they start barking. Like idiots, all right? We can be upstairs getting ready. We can hear them barking. I can be downstairs in my office crafting another brilliant sermon, my oratory genius preparing to alter the flow of the natural world. And those guys, what's so funny? Those guys start yipping and yapping. And so I hear them and I'll wait a minute. And if they stop, then I know, it was probably a dog or a bird or a leaf blowing across the lawn. But if they keep going and they get louder, well, someone's probably at the door. They serve us as cozy companions, on a chilly winter day, or they keep me active walking and playing. But they also serve this purpose, and they come in very handy as the world's most annoying doorbell. Did you know that all of us have a purpose? That each of us have gifts and talents that help us to find employment, of course, but also to contribute to our world, to serve and to assist others whenever we can offer those gifts and abilities, whenever they're needed. Now, we can all question different times of our lives, our roles and our abilities. Some of us, we find jobs that we stick with. Maybe we enjoy them for decades. We even make a career out of them. But many others are having a harder time, sitting still or finding their niche and staying in one spot for too long. That's okay. But no matter what we do or where we live, whatever kind of family we have grown up in, there is a truth that we all need to know. We are not accidents, and we are all here on this earth for a reason. I often joke that to my parents, I was a little bit of an oops. They already had 3 kids. They had maxed out the seating capacity in their car. Minivans were still a thing of the future at that point. And they had kind of, settled into a routine of parenthood, that comfortable lifestyle, knowing what was going on, who had what kid when, And then Mom, one day, noticed those familiar feelings she had when expecting the first 3. And with both of my parents at that point, kind of, in their late 30s, almost 5 years after the birth of their last kid, just a few days before Christmas of 1973, they finally had a perfect baby. Rumor had it, though, I was a little bit weird. Mom said she would come into my room to, check on me. I wasn't making any noise. This was before the age of baby monitors. I mean, come on. They still used landlines, all right, with rotary dial phones back then. But she would peek in my crib, and I would just be lying there, kind of creepy. My eyes would just be wide open, staring off into space. Probably thinking about, man, I am going to love that Star Trek show someday. But apparently I was also easily soothed. If I was a little bit fussy, Mom would just dip my soother in molasses, and my eyes would just roll back into my head. Probably explains why I have such a sweet tooth. But even though I may not have been planned exactly, I think my folks were eventually happy with my arrival, especially after I dropped a handful of grandkids in their laps. But most of us have had our doubts about ourselves, our usefulness, our purpose in this world. But the thing is, like we said, each of us is here for a reason. We may never play on a Stanley Cup winning team, like most Leafs players, all right? We may never become the Prime Minister of Canada, or a firefighter, or an astronaut, or stand before a massive crowd to deliver a groundbreaking speech, or perform and sing our latest hit song. But that does not mean that God does not have a place and a purpose for you to be here. And today, as we pick up Jesus' trail, as he continues his quest to prepare the world for what was soon going to happen, we begin chapter 9 of the Gospel of John. And we see him meet up with a man who was born blind, never had sight in his life. And both this man and the people around him, we're going to see, they will discover this truth about all of us having a purpose. Pick up in John chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Interesting question they asked him. Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. So Jesus and his disciples, they meet up with this man who never had the gift of sight. Blind since the day he was born. Never watched a sunset. Couldn't describe to you what a tree looked like. He had no idea the difference between the color blue or red. And now what's interesting here, though, is how the disciples related this man's handicap with sin. It was a very common belief in the Jewish culture to connect sickness and physical issues or deformities with a cause like this. This cause was often seen as spiritual. And so if someone came down with, let's say, leprosy, well, instead of understanding that it was a skin infection, today treated simply with antibiotics, it was seen instead as this curse by God for something they had done wrong. If a person was born crippled in some way, blind, deaf, unable to walk, they would often see that as a result, as we witness here, that perhaps their parents had done something sinful and then passed the consequences of their actions onto their child. Now, in a sense, there is a little bit of truth in this line of thinking. The world that we live in case you haven't noticed, it's broken. It has been since Genesis chapter 3, all right? God gave people something called free will, and then we went and we used that free will to choose to do whatever we wanted to do. Now, we've been made in the image of God. We have the potential to choose good, to choose the right thing. But so often, am I right, we default to, the theme of every Disney princess movie, and we follow our hearts instead. And since, like the Bible teaches, every inclination of the human heart is evil, well, a lot of our choices can create problems. The Bible teaches in the book of Romans that the world has been groaning like a woman in the pains of childbirth. And this is the result of our sin. And so all of the issues that we see going on, all of these issues that have been going on for ages, fires, earthquakes, diseases, famines and floods, all those things. While we like to label things and call them, climate change, which is something, but this has all been happening since almost the beginning of time. Yes, our overuse of the resources God has given us has and will contribute to all of our issues and all of these worldly problems. But you see, the big picture shows us that all of it is a result of our choices, of our sin. And one of those results is, unfortunately, sickness and disease and various illnesses that can affect us in different ways. And this is why the disciples asked this question. This wasn't in a vacuum. Who sinned, Jesus, this man or his parents? Because they related his blindness to something someone did. But just because there is sickness in the world as a result of sin, it does not mean that a particular disease or certain ailment happens because of it. Think about it. There are criminals sitting in jail, some for decades, because they have been charged with despicable crimes. Multiple life sentences handed down for the murder of innocent people. And many of them live long lives in good health, way into their 80s or even 90s. Meanwhile, I and some of you know and are praying for a young mother with young kids, wonderful Christian lady who has been diagnosed with an aggressive stage 4 bone cancer. You want to try and put that concept that some deranged person can go and shoot up a school and kill a bunch of kids and be in perfect health, while a lady who loves and follows Jesus is taking cancer treatments and might have to say goodbye to her family, and you want me to think that's because of sin? I don't think so. And thankfully, Jesus goes on to talk about this misunderstanding. Because he's like, no, guys. His blindness has nothing to do with a sin. His sin or his parents' sin. He's actually here for a reason. He is here so that the power of God could be seen in him. The story continues. Then he, Jesus, spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. And he told him, "Go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam." And so the man went and washed and came back seeing. I find this miracle fascinating. Jesus doesn't just tell this man, "See again," and it happens. He doesn't snap his fingers. He doesn't simply touch him on the shoulder. No, he clears his throat. And he drops a big old loogie in the dirt. And then he bends down and uses the spit to make mud. Ew, right? And then proceeds to pick up that mud, and then it gets better. Rub the mud on the dude's eyes. Of course, telling him to then go and wash it off in a nearby pool, which he probably doesn't require much convincing to do that. But he goes immediately, and as soon as the mud rinses away, his eyes begin to work. So whenever I see something unique like this, it makes me pause and think. Why the mud? Right? Why the spit show and the homemade eye makeup, right? Why not a simple be healed and just be done with it? Well, we learn what happens here. The man goes, he's either learned how to navigate this area by himself or someone helps him, we're not told, but he goes to this pool to wash off this supernatural mud pack. And the whole time this is happening, there are people there watching and wondering, what's going on here? And the man washes his face, and as the water runs down and he opens his eyes, his pupils dilate for the first time. He squints as they take in light, and he sees shapes and colors, and his brain processes the information as his eyes are just darting around, taking in every sight and wonder. And this whole time, people are watching him because they've known this guy for years. He's always been blind. But now he's obviously had something happen that borders on the miraculous. Some even ask, is this the same guy that we know, or is he some lookalike, some doppelganger? Because it's hard to process a blind guy suddenly being able to see, right? And they're like, wow. They ask him, man, what happened here? And he's like, this Jesus guy came along and he put this mud on my eyes and told me to wash it off, and now, I don't know, I can see. And they're like, that's incredible. Wow, where is he now? Which is kind of a funny question, because he's like, I don't know. I was blind, remember? I don't even know what the man looks like. But he's going around telling everyone. And in that process, we find out the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they catch wind of this. And they hear it, and they're like, what? Jesus again? And he healed another person on the Sabbath again. It's amazing that this blind man could see, but these spiritually blind people could not see. Because all they could think about was that Jesus was doing his thing again, working on the Sabbath. And so they also questioned this man. How can this be? We actually believe Jesus to be a sinner because he's working on the Sabbath. And the man tells them, sorry, I can't answer your questions. All he knows is that once he was blind, but now he can see. There's so much controversy being stirred up here as a result of this event. A blind man is given back his sight. But not in some private setting, not in a home or way out in the countryside, somewhere away from people. Now, Jesus slathers his face with this mud spit. He gets him to trek across town to this pool. The whole time people are watching this fellow with mud all over his face. He washes it off, gets his sight back, and everyone knows it, including these religious leaders. And they want answers. And what's amazing here is how it all goes back to the question first asked by the disciples. Why was this man born blind? And Jesus' answer points them away from what they originally thought. This man, he has a purpose. He is here for a reason. And the crowds that day see the power of God at work. A mud-faced blind man finding his way through the crowds to find water. His sight being restored, and all these people being witness to it all. And I understand some might lean heavily on the side of God purposefully making this man blind for so long in order to do this and accomplish this. And maybe, that's where your brain first went. And that's a possibility, but from what I see in the rest of the Bible, God isn't the one causing problems. But he does work in the middle of them to show people his love and his power. His friend, Lazarus, died. People get sick and die every day. That's part of living in this broken world. And it's a reminder to us every day that this world is not our permanent home. That God has something so much better in store. But Jesus came to the funeral and he wept for his friend before telling him to wake up and to start breathing again. Because in that moment, he allowed the natural world to function, but then showed us all that he has the power over it all. And my friends, when sickness and illness strike, that is the truth that we can lean on. It's awful. Of course it is. It's not pretty. We all would love to avoid it. And honestly, it is easy to think that when it happens close to us, that it's not fair. I've been there. I'm sure most of you have as well. But what we can learn from this example of Jesus is that while this reminder exists daily for us, that this world is damaged because of sin, and as a result of this, we will be affected by it. When it happens, we can still serve a purpose and show the people around us a little bit of light that comes from God. In his timing, God may or may not bring healing. I've seen his power at work. I am confident that he still does miracles. I still have my best friend, and my kids still have the best mom. But sometimes the miracle comes in a different way. When a person faced with sickness and with dying, is still able to show those around them a strength, a peace, a joy, and a light that comes only from knowing and trusting in Jesus. Let's pray. It's amazing, Father, how broken this world is. We have so many reasons for it, so many excuses. We try to fix some things, and in many ways, Christians, your followers, should be some of the world's best environmentalists and people who try to help. And thank you for the people who step up and do humanitarian things to help people in need, who help in hospitals with people who are sick, Father. The reality is, this world is broken, and all of these horrific things continue to happen as a result of sin just infecting the world around us. And as a result, we see pain and hurt, sickness and death, God. It's a reality we just cannot and will not overcome while the world is still the way it is. But in the meantime, you have given us so much hope through what your Son has done for us on the cross. And we can look forward to the day when this world will be renewed and repaired when he comes again, and we can stand with him for all eternity in a perfect world. But until that day comes, I just pray you would help all of us as your followers to show everyone around us that there is hope, that there is peace. We can have joy in this world because of what Jesus has done for them. And that you would give us the encouragement and the boldness we need to share this love with everyone we meet. Help us to realize that we too are all here for a reason, and we have a purpose to glorify you and show your power at work. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's all stand together.
When my heart is torn asunder and my world just falls apart, Lord, you put me back together and lift me up to where you are. There is hope beyond the suffering, joy beyond the tears.
Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. And if you get tomorrow off, booyah, good for that. And we hope to see you all here next week. Let's go into this world and share a little bit of light with people who desperately could stand to do so. God bless.